Hello and welcome to episode 115 of Nugget's Dungeon Terrain. In this episode, I'm going to be experimenting with this $3 packet of polymer clay. I'm going to see how many different monsters I can make out of it and test out a few tips that I've picked up along the way. So that one packet allowed me to produce all of these bits and pieces. I was mostly experimenting with some basic shapes, the old roll out a sausage and see what you can turn it into, as well as a couple of pieces that I was going to use as underform work for a larger model. So I set all of these pieces in the oven with alfoil on top on the recommended temperature, and I put them on for about 1 hour instead of 20 to 30 minutes. The idea is, evidently, that as long as you don't exceed a certain temperature, you won't overcook the polymers and it will just harden a little more in the center. Here's a closer look at one of the pieces. So to create the beholder, I first created a ball. In the front of it, I depressed some different shapes using these fondant tools. A clear advantage that green stuff would have over using this product would be that you can let stuff harden and then add other things to it without it modifying. Obviously, as I'm working on this piece, I'm going to have to experiment with how much pressure I can put on it in terms of deforming the other side of it. I'm going to be adding some ends of toothpicks in later to make it look like jagged teeth. In order for that to work, I know that I'll need to poke some holes in now, because once it's hard, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get them in. So, in case you haven't already worked it out, I'm definitely no artist, definitely not a sculptor, and this is definitely an experiment. And it's about this point in the project where I started to press too much on one side and not keep a certain level of balance and symmetry in the face. So from here on, this particular project has already been cooked, 1 hour at about 130 degrees Celsius. And now I'm just adding some extra texture. In hindsight, I wish I'd added a lot more texture to all of the models, especially this one and the snake. To make it look a little bit more menacing though, I did add a whole bunch of dried rose thorns in a sort of a crest along the back of the head. Once all of the thorns were in place, I started inserting the tentacles. I painted the whole piece red and then went back and added some extra texture using this modelling gel, especially around the back of the head. I used it to fill in the gaps between the tentacles and the head and between the rose thorns in the head. In case you're wondering, the tool that I've been using here is the same one that a dentist would use to control the different materials that are going in and out of your mouth. So the whole thing's been painted red and then painted over using Tamiya clear red. Gives it that sort of gory sheen. So, as I said before, this is an experiment. I haven't spent a lot of time painting it, but I wanted to get an idea about how it would take the different colours and just how much texture I need to put on before it actually becomes interesting to highlight. All in all, the piece turned out okay. I'll probably keep it for now and see how it goes in the next game. And here's a look at how some of the other pieces turned out that came off that same batch. Here's the giant leech with a human mini for scale. In comparison to the first one that I ever made, I decided to focus on the body of the leech being a lot flatter and more traditionally shaped. The mouth turned out okay, but as you look down the underside of the body, you can see there's some areas that I didn't connect properly. Out of all of them, I think the snake's probably the biggest fail. I needed to add a lot more texture and scale work, and I needed to think a little bit more about the paint job. I definitely need to go back and have a little bit more practice and research on how a snake's head's supposed to look, and it would have helped if the fangs were more jagged and curved instead of straight. In this shot, for example, it's looking pretty buck-toothed. I'm fairly happy with the sculpt of the worm, although the paint job is pretty sucky. I don't think it helped to put such a glossy finish on it. I was hoping it would look particularly slimy, but it just makes it look more fake. all these weird ugly pieces were put in because I was experimenting with armatures. I wanted to see if the wire would go through okay. I used all those pieces together to make this treasure golem. Imagine a huge pile of treasure that comes to life when you get close to it, with all of the swords and spears and arrows that are part of the treasure jutting out and making a vicious attacking arm. So thank you for tuning in. I've got about another 10 or so of pieces like this that I'm going to share in the next couple of videos, plus the lessons I learned from it.